Hello, argument fans. Welcome back to Making Meaningful Argument. This is lecture 4 in the series. Dr. Steve Yano with you again. And the last few, we kind of talked about argument as a thing that kind of happens to you. But what if you want to make argument happen? What if you want to create argument or create argument as product? What are some of the steps you can do to make sure that's as effective as it can be? Remember, argument is about making relationships and reaching people. So with that philosophy in mind, here are some ideas of how to go about making and creating and building argument. First, you got to refine your thesis. What is it you want to talk about? Then you have to gather resources, consider your audience, and then you get to start crafting. So don't jump into it thinking, oh, I've got the facts. The facts are going to do it for me. I've got this great quote. I'm done. No. Those are parts of what you have to do. To have meaningful arguments, you have to do a lot of work. The facts will not save you. The truth will not save you. These are often people gravitate towards these things because making an argument work is a lot of effort. And you can't just tell somebody the facts and hope for the best. You have to really prepare. It's like cooking something, like cooking a steak and not seasoning it. Well, it's a steak. It's supposed to be good. Well, you got to put some work into it. You got to make it tasty. You got to make it appealing, just like any good cook would. So what does it mean to refine a thesis? Well, you have to create what I call emotion. And in formal debate practice, and people who do formal competitive debate, emotion or resolution is a kind of a given idea about how to approach what you're supposed to do. Emotion is a declarative statement that invites consideration along the lines of agreement or disagreement. So any debate or any argument that's centered around a question is going to go off the rails because a question can be answered in as many ways as it could be phrased. And questions can be answered in all kinds of ways, including, this isn't the right question. What emotion does is it sets a declarative sentence and it sets some ground rules for what the discussion should be about. Agreement or disagreement with this sentence in order to present a great way of creating argumentative statements. Let's look at some examples. Should you be a vegan? Should the United States forgive student loan debt? Or should we have a national service requirement for young people? All great questions that can be the start of creating an argument, but let's narrow them down into something that will derive what our position would be from in a much clearer way that serves our audience, our opponent, and ourselves a lot better. Veganism is the best diet to have. Okay, that's a great motion. It hinges on an agreement-disagreement. It makes us kind of inquire after it. What do you mean by best? Things like that, which would be clarified in the argument. The United States should forgive student loan debt. Another great one. How much? How should they do it? All these questions come up. But again, those questions are predicated on this idea that I can agree or disagree with that statement. It gives us a lot of resources to build argument on. And finally, there should not be a national requirement service for young citizens. Great topic. This is a great motion. Now, these are not the things that you're going to make your argument about, obviously. These are quite neutral, but they invite agreement and disagreement. So you can say, on this topic, I take the position that, and you make yourself unique, you differentiate yourself, and you place yourself in a position to better articulate your view. Now, how do I gather resources for putting my argument together? Well, there's an ancient thing called Stasis Theory. It's from ancient Athens, ancient Greek world. Other cultures have similar kinds of things, but the one that is most commonly taught in the Western rhetorical tradition of argumentation is Stasis Theory. And Stasis Theory is 4 issues that are questions where you can generate resources about your topic. They are conjecture, definition, quality, and policy. Now, one of the ways to think about Stasis Theory is you're not identifying where you can win. You're identifying the pressure point. So think about it as like a massage, and somebody hits that pressure point where the tension is, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's the spot. That's where the tension is, and everything kind of falls out. That's the way Stasis Theory works. It's like a very good acupressure or a very good massage that gets the tension out. So let's look at how to use Stasis Theory in terms of our veganism topic. So conjecture, which is all about what's present, what's around. A lot of times people say conjecture is about the facts, but it could also just be the information that's out there. And you see the things that I've put here on the screen: the health impacts, environmental impacts, ethics and animal welfare impacts, and economic impacts. So you'd want to list those out and make those a part of what it is that you're considering. Definition: what does it mean to be truly vegan? Can I have honey? Can we eat fish? Those kind of things can come out and might be the place where you want to really push and release the pressure and make the argument work. What's best for whom and when? Can children do it? Is it good for babies? Is it good for family pets? All these things come up. And then what's a diet? Is it even good to have a diet? You might want to take on that position as well. Quality. How quickly should you start? Should you jump right in or should you transition in? How strict should you be? Can you take breaks from it? How do you negotiate with your friends or family? If you have a family of meat eaters, can you do veganism on your own? Is it possible? And how careful should you be with it? Like careful in terms of your health or sickness. If you get sick, should you stop? All these kinds of things. And policy. How do we shop? How do I make sure I'm buying vegan things? How do I go out to a restaurant and make sure I can keep veganism, or is that important in some way? And what organizations or groups should I support if I really want to go all in on veganism? So these are just some of the things I would brainstorm about it. Now from that, I can pick what it is I want to talk about. So the way this would sound is you say, veganism is the best diet to have because of the ethical implications on how we source meat in our country or in our region of the world, wherever you happen to be. I'm in the United States, so I say in the United States. It could also be the economic impacts of it, that people starve because of our taste for meat. Or it could be complete health impacts of it. There's lots of different things. You could also use 3 of those as 3 different reasons, but now you see you have raw materials assembled from which you can build your argument in favor of veganism or against it. If you wanted to be against it, you would use the exact same system to build it up. Now let's talk about audiences. In argument, one of the things that's a definitive feature of argument is the person you're arguing with is also probably your audience, or the group of people you're arguing back and forth with are also probably your audience. They're the people you're trying to convince. So here's some things to think about when you think about audience, putting things together. Audiences are resources. They add to the argumentative situation. They add a lot to it. So think about where they come from. What's their origin, geography or otherwise? How does that, when that comes in the room, that's a resource we can use to help build our arguments. What's surrounding and circulating them in their lives? Think about things happening in popular culture and politics that might be on their mind. You can use that as a resource to make connections to what it is that you want to say or write about, or what you want to present to them in an argument as product. Or even if you want to have an argument with somebody, it might be better to start with something that's circulating popularly, that's non-controversial, as a way into getting them to see the importance of what you have to say. What do they bring in the room with them? What's going on in their lives? What values do they have? What assumptions do they have? And also, what inspires them? What moves them? And what do they want? Why did they come to hear you anyway? Why did they listen and click on your podcast? Why are they reading your blog? These desires and what inspires them can help you generate really great arguments, because again, argument isn't about winning. It's about making connections and building that relationship. The final thing is you have to predict what people might say against you. Imagine someone who's exactly like you in terms of reason and research on this topic, but who's committed to disagreeing with you. What might they say? Well, instead of what might they say, I have 3 questions here. What would they ask? What would they distrust? And what would they believe? These questions will help you nail down kind of the areas of argument that you might want to respond to. With this kind of thing, you want to put it right into your presentation and say, some people might distrust, or some people might ask, or some people might believe that. Here's what I would say to that. Not, you're wrong. Here's what I would say in response to that. Here's how I would massage that point to bring you maybe closer to what it is that I believe. So those are some of the ideas that help you kind of create the building blocks and the starting point of generating some arguments. I hope you find them useful. Give Stasis Theory a try. It's quite revolutionary when you brainstorm all that stuff and you have all these different things to work with after you've set out your motion and what it is you want to argue.